Donald Trump went to Japan recently, and when he was there, he saw something he liked, gay cars. So much so, he stated on social media that he approves of these tiny cars, as he put them, being made and sold in the United States. And if you ask me, the possibility of these $10,000 Japanese microcars zipping around on American streets sounds pretty darn nice. Especially in comparison to thinking about having to make monthly payments of $1,000 or more for some bloated blob on wheels. Which begs the question, why is buying a new car in the United States so expensive? How could Trump's recent policy moves potentially bring down the price of all cars, new and used? Reason 1, car dealerships. Good Lord, I hate these places. Pushy, giving you the runaround, the constant upselling, lowballing your trade-in, and wasting your time. These contemptible creatures somehow manage to be even less likable than both lawyers and members of Congress. Yet here we are in 2025, still stuck buying new cars from these scumbags. And that's no accident. These dealerships for the last 100 years have made it so you don't have a choice in the matter and pay a premium for the privilege of putting up with their crap. How much of a premium? About 10% of the base price of each new car goes to the dealer. And that's not including the post-COVID price gouging added on top of that. So why are we, the American people, still putting up with them and paying more than the rest of the world to do so? Regulatory capture. Translation? They've spent the last century lobbying on a state-by-state basis to preserve their politically protected status, such that by 1990, legally, Americans had no choice but to buy a new car from a franchise dealership. So what is a franchise dealership? Let's use an example. You have Ford, one of many large corporations that actually makes the cars that you buy. No different than any other large multinational business that makes stuff, like Apple with iPhones or IKEA with self-assembled furniture. But unlike Apple or IKEA, which can sell their products any way they see fit, the automakers had no such ability. Thanks to a purposely convoluted network of legally binding contracts, state laws, and federal laws, automakers are generally required to sell their vehicles to existing auto dealer franchises, which are separate businesses that are fully independent of the automakers themselves. Translation: automakers cannot sell to you directly because they have been legally prohibited from doing so by the extensive lobbying of legally entrenched, politically protected middlemen. And while Tesla has been fighting the fight to untangle this opaque regulatory mess for the last 15 years, legacy automakers making most of the cars that people actually buy are still beholden to these middlemen. And trust me, the automakers themselves hate this, but they won't say it. Every time Chevrolet of Slumstown treats their customers like crap and swindles them, the dealership doesn't face the flak, the manufacturer does. Normies don't know that Chevrolet of Slumstown and Chevrolet, the automaker, are two wholly separate businesses entities with different interests. All they know is that they got treated badly when buying a Chevrolet car. They just think of Chevrolet as Chevrolet, and they don't see the nuance. In this way, the ambiguity a car buyer faces with regards to who exactly they are dealing with during the process of buying impedes on people's ability to organize against these rent-seeking entities and fight for something better. Apple doesn't have this problem because customers know clearly when they're at an official Apple store versus a third-party reseller. As for car buyers, since no official Ford factory stores or any legacy automaker exists in America, the public is kept in the dark, allowing these faceless middlemen to continue to hide behind the manufacturer's brand and avoid the consequences of their actions. Reason 2. The federal government. Like Pennywise the Clown, I really wish that the car dealers would have just stayed in their podunk towns to slumber and feed upon the villagers instead of spreading elsewhere. But sadly, that isn't what happened. These swamp donkeys instead took it even further and manufactured American life itself to be in their financial self-interest. It wasn't good enough for them to just control the sale of cars. No. They had to control all transportation itself, which is why in towns throughout America during the mid-20th century, they lobbied for mandatory parking minimums and zoning restrictions that forced all new housing moving forward to be spread so far apart, streetcars, cycling, or even walking to and from was no longer a viable way to get around the places that people live. No. From the 1950s onward, everybody had to have a car just to be able to participate in American economic life, which made car dealers go from a politically protected racket to having a godlike grip on American society, no different than what the mafia had on Sicily in the 1980s. Public infrastructure like subways, intercity rail, and streetcars either languished or disappeared entirely. Why? So car dealerships, in tandem with automakers and oil companies, could get their cut from as many people as possible. But while all this was happening, the American people still held one means of bypassing the dealerships: the gray market. If you've ever bought an iPhone in New Hampshire while living in Massachusetts to save on sales tax, or traveled to Canada to bulk buy cheaper insulin because you have the beatus and like not dying, that's the gray market. Going outside the specific sales channels theoretically set up for you to alternative sales channels to get a better price, more options, better service, or just for the novelty of having something different from everybody else. Prior to the 1990s, cars were the same way. If, for example, your local Ford dealer didn't have the exact car you wanted, was asking too much money, or just hated car dealerships in general, absolutely nothing was stopping you from traveling to a Ford showroom abroad, buying the exact product you wanted, shipping it back home, and using that car on American roads. Sure, you were foregoing things like a warranty and federal lemon laws protecting consumers from defective cars, but for some people, the trade-off was worth it. And if a manufacturer didn't sell their cars in the US at all, like Citroën or Opel in the 1970s, the gray market was the only option if you, an American, wanted to buy their cars. But that wasn't to last. Auto dealers, specifically Mercedes-Benz dealers in the 1980s, saw their customer base fast drying up. Not because the customers weren't buying Mercedes-Benzes anymore, but because people realized if they bought a Mercedes in Germany instead, an unusually strong US dollar meant they could not only save up to 30% on the purchase price, but they also had more options to customize the vehicle to their liking and got a better sales experience while they were at it. Now, the laws of capitalism state that any business that is losing customers should either lower their price, offer better service, or change their value proposition for the better if they want to survive. Mercedes-Benz dealers in America instead went complaining to Big Daddy government. By 1989, using every politician's favorite excuse for things they don't like, the claim of closing a loophole, the gray market for cars was slammed shut. From then on out, all vehicles that entered the United States in any form had to be certified by the automaker that they comply with federal motor vehicle safety and emission standards, a regulatory framework that offers no reciprocity with and is arbitrarily different from the motor vehicle safety and emission standards used and accepted by pretty much every other country in the world, and in my view, objectively inferior by those used by the rest of the world. The key words here are by the automaker. Those words are key because overnight, individuals lost the ability to import their own cars, and the US auto market was effectively closed off from the rest of the world. Thus, it effectively became an island of state micromanagement and control, no different than the industries of the Soviet Union of old. Wonder why used car prices are so high? Because there is no legal way to increase the supply of used cars in the short term. People in other countries can just import newer model used cars from places like Europe or Japan as a safety valve to keep prices from becoming too unaffordable. But not America, and surprise, surprise, the car equivalent of breadlines has happened not once but twice in America during my short lifetime. First, 18 years ago, with the Cash for Clunkers program creating a knock-on used car shortage in the early mid-2010s. Secondly, it made the COVID car shortage and dealer price gouging a thing, since dealers know where else are they gonna go? And both failures happened to the car market specifically during times of economic stress because all levels of government were micromanaging the market. And if there's anything I've come to know, when comparing a free market with real consumer choice to central planning, giving people choices always results in better outcomes. Why is everything an expensive, bloated SUV? Looser government regulations on light trucks mean SUVs are cheaper to make than smaller cars. Dealers sell you these SUVs for a higher price and market it as the more desirable vehicle, puffing up their margins to sell you a less safe automobile. And with no gray market access for customers, dealers can collectively jack up the prices on this slop unchecked by meaningful competition to their corrupt business model. Why is the car buying experience so bad? Because dealers know you have no other choice but to go through them. In the absence of competition between different sales models, a monopoly for that sales model forms, and monopolies, no matter what kind, always create price gouging, poor quality products, and terrible customer service. As of 2025, individual car buyers in both Russia and China do have access to the gray market. Meanwhile, in America, the nation built around freedom and the automobile, you are less free to buy the new car of your choice than in both Russia and China. The irony is not lost on me. Part 3. Solutions. So modern cars in America are bloated, overpriced, and their supply is surrounded by a web of regulations that politically protect the extortionate racket that make the cars on offer so god-awful in the first place. The question is, what can be done about it? Simple. Give the American car buyer more options. Donald Trump's remarks about wanting K cars built and sold in America is a huge first step in making this happen. Not only did Trump's comments add a huge amount of political momentum to make it happen, but this is the first real policy change I've heard an American elected official propose that actually takes on the root causes of why car prices are so high in the first place, an overregulated market. With the average new car in America selling for $50,000, even legalizing only K cars for sale and use on American roads would go a long way in lowering the prices of all cars on the market, new and used. Why? Dealers would have a much harder time gaslighting customers into thinking that paying $100,000 for a Jeep is normal if customers also have the option to buy a mid-spec K-Class Suzuki Jimny for $15,000. By the way, this price includes Trump's import tariffs, state sales taxes, and shipping. Pre-tax, these start $9,500 new in Japan. And I don't know about you, but Americans having to pay 10 times the price of people elsewhere just to be able to get a new 4x4 then go off the beaten path and have some off-road fun or just take you to the beach, that seems comically absurd to me. But what if K cars were just the start of something more? Let's assume that overnight, the Trump administration's broader ongoing trade talks with the European Union and Japan are a success and deals are signed between them. As a part of these deals, European, Japanese, and American safety standards for cars are given equivalency. A car that meets European or Japanese safety and emission standards can now be freely sold in America, and vice versa. What would happen? 5 years ago, I thought this would be a pipe dream, and that in order to buy the car that I wanted, I needed to leave America and go live somewhere else. But now, reciprocal recognition of vehicle safety and emission standards was a clearly stated objective in the most recently released Memorandum of Understanding issued by US and EU trade officials negotiating the terms of a broader free trade deal. This is no pipe dream anymore. There is now a real, ongoing shift happening in the regulatory structure, and that shift would change everything. For one, existing franchise dealers in America would face meaningful competition at scale for the first time in nearly a century. A Ford dealer couldn't get away with charging me a $20,000 market adjustment fee on an F-250 Super Duty pickup truck because nothing would stop me from buying the exact same vehicle from Mexico and driving it back home, except the border check where I'd have to pay all relevant taxes and fees to the customs office. Used car prices would also drop. If a used car dealer or private seller tries asking $15,000 for a 2018 Honda Civic, they get nowhere. Why? To provide a real example, I could buy the same 2018 Honda Civic for half the price in Dubai at the time of writing. Since Dubai uses EU regulations on cars sold there, importing this gray market Civic into the US would be fair game. Prices wouldn't equalize across markets, resulting in America's artificially more expensive cars coming down in price to match the global market price. And in this age of the internet, you wouldn't necessarily need to buy the car in person. Just order your new car online from the manufacturer, send off your money, and wait for it to be delivered to your door. This could happen even without states repealing their dealer franchise laws. Simply by the automaker setting up their online order platform and storage outside the US or in a part of the US that states can't regulate, like Indian reservations. Legally, it'd be no different than buying an old video game from a retro game shop in Japan and bringing it home, or a Virginia farmer selling blueberries to a restaurant in Maryland. Both are interstate commerce, meaning only Congress has the power to regulate it. State laws can't touch it. Of course, if this were to happen, auto dealer franchises and their century-old political machine would start throwing around lawsuits like it's going out of style to try and stop it. Let's be real though, with the Trump administration putting real political weight into backing this initiative, both in Trump's off-script remarks about K-cars and the memoranda jointly released by US and EU trade officials, this great opening of the US auto market isn't a matter of if anymore. It's a matter of when and how fast things will open up. So what do you guys think? What do you think the best way to lower the price of cars in America is? Do you agree with Trump that Japan's tiny cars should be sold in America? And do you think car dealers have a place in the 21st century? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this content, feel free to like the video, share it, or hit the subscribe button. Thanks guys. Till next time.